Alright, this is Honors Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus. We are doing section 1.3 in Algebra 2. So we're going to talk about writing the equation of lines. This is a skill set that you're going to have to apply through a lot of your higher level mathematics. So although we're seeing it here in Algebra 2, it's a skill that's going to prove super useful when you get to calc and in other classes beyond that, and also in classes like physics. So when you're writing the equation of a line, it's sort of easier to know that no matter how difficult a problem is, you can do the same couple steps. So essentially, I'm going to suggest that whenever you're finding the equation of any line, you do it in 3 steps. Step 1, find the point. Step 2, find the slope. And then step 3, write your equation in point slope, which we covered back in the 1.1 videos, even though I wasn't supposed to do so. As a note, I'd point out that you should only simplify that point slope if you are required to do so. In certain instances, like here's one, maybe you were specifically asked by a teacher for a different form. Like, I'm not going to ask you personally for slope-intercept in general. I prefer point slope. But if a teacher says, give the equation of a line in standard form or in slope-intercept form, then you might have to adjust the formula that you got in point slope to make it look like what you're being asked to find. Second reason you might want to do that is that it's a multiple choice test, and if you find the equation but your answer isn't identical to the equations that are listed, then you might have to modify your answer to find the correct multiple choice answer. And then the third reason might be something like, there is a form that is in some way more useful to you for the context of the problem that you're going to be asked to do later. So sometimes we find the equation of a line as the first part in a much larger problem, and we're going to see that a lot in classes like calculus. And sometimes different forms of that line are more useful than others. So you might have the point slope form, and you might decide to manipulate it in some way to make it look different so it's more useful for you. As we move forward in mathematics, simplification is going to become a thing that you do selfishly. You don't simplify something because a teacher asked you to, or because, whatever. You simplify something because it is simpler for you to use the modified, simplified version. So it's going to be something that you do to benefit yourself. So in 1.3, I'm not going to use the examples in the textbook, so these examples do not align with the textbook. For all examples, the task that's being put ahead of you for all examples and practice problems is to write the equation of the line. Notice that it doesn't specify which form, so I don't care if you put it in point slope or slope intercept or standard form like a crazy person, whatever you want to do, but I'm going to suggest that you want it to stay at point slope, and I'll explain to you why as we work through these problems. So let's look at example 1 first. In example 1, I want you to write the equation of a line with a slope of 2/3 and through the point 3, 1. So if we go over to these steps that I've listed here, step 1 is find the point. Check, I did it, it's 3, 1. Step 2, find the slope. Check, I did it, it's 2/3. Step 3, write the answer. So remember that point slope is y minus the y value, so y minus y1 equals m, and then in parentheses x minus the x1. So what I say in my head every time I've done this for literal decades is y minus the y value equals m, quantity x minus the x value. So this answer is going to look like this. Y minus the 1 equals 2/3, and then in parentheses x minus 3. And this answer is awesome. I would not simplify this in any way. Now, could you distribute the 2/3 and write this in slope-intercept form? Absolutely. Here's the reason I don't advocate that you do this. At least 10 times a year in my AP Calc classes, a student will be asked to write the equation of a line. They will correctly have an answer, and then when they distribute the slope and try to clean it up, they turn their right answer into a wrong answer because they make some simple calculation error, because I can't tell you how much it's the little easy math mistakes that kill you when you do more higher level math. You can do an incredibly hard calculus problem and then add 2 and 2 and get 7. I kid you not, it happens. So essentially, the analogy I like to give my classes is this is like getting a yes from your parents when you ask to do something, and then giving them more information and your yes turns into a no. So let's say you say, Mom, can I go see the movie with Jane? And your mom says yes. And then you say, cool, we're going to go see, and then you tell her what movie, and she's like, no. So you had a yes and you turned it into a no. Same situation here. You have a correct equation. This answer is 100% correct. Don't simplify it and risk making a silly error that takes your right answer and makes it wrong. Now, that said, this is absolutely 100% the same as the answer you would get if you distributed the 2/3. So you'd get 2/3 x minus 2, and then you'd add the 1 over. So this is the same answer as y equals 2/3 x. It'd be minus 2, and yeah, the 1, so minus 1, right? And that's absolutely the exact same answer, and it's fine. But you risk making a mistake if you do that. I would suggest you leave it as this answer. If you stubbornly insist on solving for y, you should do it the laziest possible way, which is to add this 1 over separately. So the best possible answer, if asked to solve for y, is 2/3 times the quantity x minus 3, all plus the 1 at the end, which is completely correct and solved for y, but doesn't risk the same mistakes that you could make when you distribute. All right, let's do a P1 that's similar. As always, you can pause me and try P1 on your own if you want. So we want a line with a slope of -5 through the point 7, -2. So again, I have my point, I have my slope. So my answer is going to be y minus the y values. You could leave it as y minus a -2, but I'm going to pick y plus 2, equals my slope, which is -5 times the quantity x minus the x value. This answer is the best possible answer. If you stubbornly want to solve for y, but you don't want to make a risky mistake, you could just subtract the 2 to the other side. It would also totally be okay to make this a -5x plus 33. It's not wrong. Again, it's just risky. So all of these answers are okay, but this is the best one because it's the least risky. All right, let's talk about E2. So E2 is going to be the situation that we've seen before where we're given 2 points and we have to find the slope. So when I'm asked to find a point, I can pick either. I'm going to pick this one because it doesn't have any negatives, and I find that people tend to do stupid things with negatives. So check, I've got a point. I need to find the slope, so to do that, I'm going to go in this direction and do y minus the y value, so that's 3 minus a -1, so 3 plus 1, over 4 minus a -2, and I get 4, 6, or 2/3. I didn't mean for it to be the same slope as the last one. So I'm going to write my answer now. Y minus the y value, which would be the 3, equals the 2/3 times the x minus the 4. So this is the best version of this answer. Now, if you had picked the other point, it would be y plus 1 equals 2/3 times the quantity x plus 2, right? And that's just fine. If you stubbornly wanted to clean this up, you're going to find that it's kind of frustrating because you're going to end up having to get a common denominator of thirds, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but you're going to find that this is much harder than it would be if you just left it as one of these two answers. Either one's fine. I would have totally picked this one because I think you should generally pick the easier point that you're less likely to mess up with. But again, totally up to you. If you had chosen to distribute, let's see, that's a -8/3 and that's a -9/3, so it'd be a +1/3. So if you chose to clean this up, and I'll just inch this over for you, if you chose to clean this up, it would end up being y equals 2/3 x plus 1/3. Let's double check that that's right. Yep, that's right. Okay, so anyway, so that's fine. This is also a totally okay answer, but again, these are better because you don't risk doing something silly. I'm going to let you do P2. Again, you can pause me if you want. P2 is the same question, but through the point 5, -1 and 4, 2. I'm going to go ahead and do it, but obviously pause me if you want to try it on your own first. So I'm going to pick this point because, again, I always pick the easier of the 2 points. And when I do my my slope, I'm going to do 2 minus a -1, which would be 2 plus 1 over 4 minus 5. So I end up getting a 3 over -1. My slope is a -3. And so then my answer is going to be y minus 2 equals -3 times the quantity x minus 4. And that what I would say is the easiest answer. You could have also used the other point if you like it better. It would have been y plus 1 equals -3 times an x minus 5, right? And let's see, it should be a -3x plus 14 if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So if you stubbornly wanted to do it the other way, like this is also fine. If you really wanted to write it in slope-intercept, it's a -3x plus 14. But again, much easier to do it in one of these two options, okay? So we're going to keep doing problems like this moving forward. Again, the same 3 steps. Find a point, find a slope, write the equation